The sky over Aetherion was the color of ash, a pale gray that never truly brightened. In the city of towers and crystal spires, everything shimmered with beauty, but it was not made for humans. Kildaro moved through the stone hallways like a ghost, his leather boots barely making a sound. He wore simple gray robes, marked with a blue thread across the shoulder, a sign that he was a servant and nothing more. The elves called him clever for a human, but they said it with smirks, never with respect. He had been taken from his village when he was only 10 years old. His parents, long dead or forgotten by the world, had been farmers. Now Cale was a soldier trained in the Elven way: fight hard, obey faster, and never ask questions. But Cale asked questions, quiet ones, dangerous ones. That morning he was ordered to clean the Queen's library, a place most humans were never allowed to enter. It was a silent, cold place filled with glowing books, each locked by magic. Cale dusted the shelves and wiped the marble floor, but his eyes kept drifting to a tall wooden cabinet in the back. It had no lock, just strange writing carved into the frame. The words weren't Elvish, they were older. He touched the handle. The door creaked open. Inside there was only one thing: a rolled-up scroll tied with a red ribbon. He shouldn't have touched it. He knew that, but something about it called to him. When his fingers brushed the scroll, a sharp pulse ran through his hand. It wasn't painful. It was like something waking up. The ribbon came loose on its own, and the scroll unrolled in his hand. His name was written there: Kildaro. He stared, heart pounding. The words on the scroll shifted like smoke, forming symbols and maps. He didn't understand most of it. But one image stood out: a black sword with red cracks burning in fire. Below it, a word was carved into the page: Ashvane. He quickly hid the scroll inside his robe. Human, a voice snapped. Cale turned. A tall elf in silver armor stood at the doorway, frowning. "You've been here too long. The Queen is waiting for her council." Cale bowed low as he had been taught. "Apologies, my lord. I was finishing the shelves." The elf scoffed and walked away. Cale straightened slowly, eyes sharp. His heart still raced from what he had seen. The scroll hadn't been a mistake. It had been waiting for him. As he walked through the glittering halls of the palace, Cale kept one hand over the hidden scroll. The elves thought they knew everything. They thought humans were broken and simple. But something had changed today. Something had started. And Kildaro, a simple soldier, was ready to break the chains. The palace of Aetherion was cold, even when the sun shone. Its white stone walls were smooth like ice, and the air always smelled faintly of silver and magic. Elves walked with quiet grace, their long robes floating behind them, their eyes sharp and proud. To them, humans were tools, clever in small ways, but always beneath them. Kildaro knew how to keep his head down. But now he walked with a secret under his robe. The scroll pulsed softly against his chest, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. That night, long after the halls had grown silent, Cale lit a single candle in his servants' quarters. His room was small, just a straw bed, a basin, and a crate for clothes. But now it held something priceless. He placed the scroll on the floor and opened it again. The strange symbols glowed faintly, but they were no longer unreadable. Somehow, Cale could understand a few of them. They spoke of forgotten times, of a weapon made not by elves, but by humans, deep in the mountains of the south. They called it the Stone of Theros. It was more than a weapon. It was power. Human power. Cale's fingers trembled. Could this be true? Had the elves hidden this from them? Had they stolen more than just land and freedom? A soft knock broke the silence. Cale quickly rolled up the scroll and stuffed it into the crate under old blankets. The door opened. A small girl stepped inside. Lena, a kitchen helper, no older than 13. Her eyes were wide. "Cale," she whispered. "The guards are talking. They say the Queen noticed you." Cale's heart skipped. "Notice me?" "She said you think differently." That you ask questions no one else dares to ask. They're watching you now. Kale frowned. That wasn't good. Being clever was dangerous. Thank you, Lena. You're brave for telling me. She gave a small nod and disappeared into the shadows. Kale sat back down, staring at the floor. The queen had noticed him. She was known for her sharp mind and sharper tongue. She didn't suffer fools or threats. Still, a plan began to form. If he could earn her trust, he could learn more. More about the elves. More about the war. And maybe, just maybe, about the Stone of Theros. The next day, Kale was assigned to clean the outer courtyard, where the Queen's War Council met. He moved slowly, keeping his ears open. They spoke of rising attacks from rebel humans in the southern lands, of losses they didn't understand, of ambushes, strange traps, and tactics the elves couldn't predict. Kale smiled to himself. Humans were learning. They were adapting. And soon, with what he now knew, Kale would do more than serve. He would lead. 3 days had passed since Kale last opened the scroll. He studied it at night, when the halls were quiet and the elves slept in their tall crystal towers. Every night he learned something new, an old map, a hidden name, or a symbol of power long buried. Now one symbol appeared again and again. A sword, cracked through the center, glowing with red fire. HFY. The scroll spoke of a secret place deep under the city. A place the elves had sealed long ago. A human forge. A memory buried in stone and silence. Kale knew it was dangerous, but the time for fear was over. He found the old passage beneath the training grounds. The entrance was behind a rusted gate no one noticed anymore. It took hours to pry it open, but once inside, Kale felt the air change. It was warmer here. The walls were darker, not made of the elves' white stone. This place was different. He moved slowly through the tunnels. Dust filled his lungs and cobwebs clung to his arms, but still he pressed forward. At the end of the tunnel, Kale found a great door. It was shaped like a flame and covered in ancient carvings. As he stepped closer, the scroll in his pocket grew hot. The door opened without a sound. Inside was a forge, silent, broken but still strong. Tools lay scattered across the floor. Metal shards sparkled like stars in the dust, and in the center, resting on a stone table, was a sword. It was short and sharp, but cracked from hilt to tip. The blade was black, as if it had been burned, and red light glowed from within the cracks. Kale stepped forward and placed his hand on the blade. Pain shot through his arm. Memories, not his own, flooded his mind. Battles, fire, screams, and a voice, deep and old, whispering, "HFY remembers you." Kale pulled his hand back, shaking. His breath came fast. The blade wasn't just a weapon. It was alive. And it had chosen him. He wrapped it in cloth and hid it beneath his robe. As he left the forge, he didn't feel fear. He felt fire in his chest. The elves thought magic belonged only to them. But they had forgotten what humans once were. He would remind them. That night, Kale met with 2 other humans, Jorn, blacksmith, and May, a former soldier turned servant. They listened in silence as Kale showed them the blade. "I need your help," he said. "I can't fix this sword alone. But with it, we can change everything." May looked at the blade, eyes wide. "Are you saying we fight back?" Kale nodded. "Not today. Not yet. But soon." He looked out the window toward the palace towers. "The elves think we are weak, but they've only seen us broken. Now it's time to show them what we truly are." The days in Etherian moved like slow rivers, graceful and quiet on the surface. But beneath, the water churned with hidden power. Kale Darrow was no longer just a soldier. His careful mind and strange new knowledge caught the attention of Queen Ellerin Valian herself. The queen was clever and sharp, and she did not like fools or mistakes. One morning, Kale was called to the palace council room. The room was large, with tall windows that let in pale sunlight and walls covered in tapestries showing the long history of the elves. Queen Ellerin sat on her high throne, her silver hair shining like moonlight. She looked down at Kale with cool eyes. "You speak well for a human," she said. "Tell me, soldier, what would you do if you had to defend this city against the rebels in the south?" Kale swallowed. He knew this was a test. "I would expect them to use tricks, ambushes, traps, night raids," he said carefully. "Their strength is not in open battle but in surprise. We must be ready for the unexpected." The council members whispered to each other. The queen nodded slowly. "Good," she said. "We will put your ideas to the test." Over the next weeks, Kale worked with the queen's advisors, helping to prepare the city's defenses. He suggested hiding troops in places the elves never thought to watch. He recommended using humans in small, fast units that could move quietly and strike suddenly. Some elves grumbled that a human was teaching them how to fight. But Queen Elren supported Kale, and that gave him power. At the same time, Kale reached out to his own people. In secret, he met with small groups of humans, workers, soldiers, even servants. He told them about the Ashvane blade and the Stone of Theros. "We have more than strength," Kale said. "We have knowledge. We have heart. We can be more than slaves. We can be free." His words sparked hope. Humans who had long accepted their fate now whispered about rebellion. They practiced fighting in hidden places and shared what Kale taught them. One night, Kale met with Lena and May in a quiet courtyard. Lena was small but fierce, and May's eyes burned with determination. "We must be patient," Kale told them. "The elves watch closely. We move too fast, and we will lose everything." May nodded. "But when the time comes, we will fight with everything we have." Kale smiled. "That time is coming." But not everyone was quiet. In the shadows, some elven nobles whispered of Kale's rise. They called him a clever pet and planned to remove him before he became too dangerous. Kale knew the risk, but he also knew that the queen trusted him, for now. He was walking a dangerous path, a path between the sword and the flame. And he was ready. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with deep reds and purples. The city of Etherian grew quiet, but Kale's mind raced. Tonight was the night. He carried the Ashvane blade carefully in a cloth wrap. Alongside him was May, steady and strong, and Joran, the blacksmith, who carried a small iron box filled with strange tools. They slipped through the narrow back streets of the city, avoiding patrols and the watchful eyes of the elven guards. Their destination was a forgotten temple beneath the city, an ancient place where the Stone of Theros was said to be hidden. Kale's heart pounded. The scroll's instructions had been clear. If the Ashvane blade was the key, then this temple was the lock. They reached a rusted iron door covered in elven runes that glowed faintly in the dark. Joran stepped forward and set to work. His hands moved quickly, removing bolts and releasing ancient seals. Finally, the door creaked open. Inside was a large chamber. The walls were carved with stories of old battles, kings, and magic lost to time. In the center stood a stone pedestal. Resting on it was a glowing crystal, the Stone of Theros. Kale stepped closer, feeling the power hum in the air. He took the Ashvane blade from its wrap and held it above the stone. The sword's cracks began to glow brighter, flames flickering from within the blade. A sudden heat filled the room. The stone pulsed, and the walls shook as if the temple itself was waking. Kale gripped the sword tightly. He could feel something, memories, voices, and power flowing into him. A voice echoed in his mind, old and deep. "You have awakened the flame of memory. Remember who you are and what humans once were." Visions flashed before Kale's eyes. Great human warriors fighting with fire and steel, cities built by human hands, and magic strong enough to shake the heavens. He gasped and lowered the sword. May looked at him with wide eyes. "Kale, what is this?" Kale swallowed. "It's the truth. Humans were never weak. Our ancestors were powerful, stronger than the elves ever admitted." Joran nodded slowly. "If this power is real, it could change everything." Kale looked at the stone, then back at his friends. We must be careful. The elves will sense this. They will come for us. They quickly hid the stone inside a heavy cloth and prepared to leave. As they moved through the tunnels, footsteps echoed behind them, heavy fast. Elven guards had found them. "Run!" Kale shouted. They sprinted through the dark passageways, the glow from the stone lighting their path. Guards shouted and gave chase, but Kale's new power gave him strength and speed beyond his training. At last, they burst out into the cool night air. Kale looked up at the stars, breathless but alive. The stone of Theros was real, and it was awake. The war had just begun. The quiet streets of Etherian had never felt more dangerous. Kale, May, and Joran knew they had little time before the elves discovered their secret. Inside the palace, whispers floated through the marble halls. The queen's advisors argued fiercely. Some called for Kale's arrest. Others urged caution. Queen Elren sat in her chamber, her face unreadable. She had trusted Kale, but now doubts gnawed at her. Was he a threat? Or a tool she could still use? Kale did not wait. He gathered his small group in the hidden forge beneath the city. There, with the ashvane blade resting on the stone table, he spoke clearly. "We have power now," Kale said, "but we need more than that. We need allies." May frowned. "The elves won't listen to us. They will hunt us down." Kale nodded. "Then we must find those who don't follow the queen blindly. Some elven nobles have their own plans. Some are unhappy with her rule." Joran raised an eyebrow. "Allies among the elves? That sounds dangerous." "Dangerous, yes," Kale said, "but necessary." The days passed with careful meetings in secret places. Kale sent messages to trusted humans scattered across the city and beyond. He reached out to an unlikely contact, a young elf named Thalin, a scholar known for questioning the queen's harsh ways. Thalin was cautious at first, but the promise of change and peace intrigued him. One evening in a quiet garden lit by silver moonlight, Kale met Thalin. "You believe humans can rise?" Thalin said softly. Kale smiled. "Not just rise. We can stand beside you. Not as slaves, but as equals." Thalin looked away, conflicted. "The queen will never agree." "Maybe not," Kale admitted, "but the world is changing." Back in the palace, rumors of rebellion grew. The queen's enemies plotted to use Kale's rise to their advantage. They whispered poison in her ear, trying to break her trust. One night, as Kale returned to his quarters, a shadow moved in the dark. A dagger flashed. Kale dodged quickly. The blade cut the air where he had been a moment before. "Traitor," hissed the attacker, a guard who had once served under Kale. Kale grabbed the guard's wrist and twisted. The man fell, defeated but alive. "Why?" Kale asked. The guard spat. "You're no human hero. You're a threat to the elves, and to the queen." Kale shook his head. "I'm trying to save us all." The guard sneered. "Only one side can win, and it won't be yours." Kale knew the fight was far from over. He had to move faster, think smarter. He looked at the ashvane blade in his hand. The fire inside it flickered like a warning. The elves were watching. The queen was waiting. And the battle for freedom had only just begun. The throne room of Etherian gleamed with polished silver and shimmering crystal. Queen Elren sat tall, her eyes sharp as winter ice. Around her, the council waited. But today, their usual calm was broken. Caldero was summoned to stand before the queen. The moment he entered, the rune held its breath. Elren's voice was calm but firm. "Kale, you have grown bold. I hear whispers of rebellion, of secret meetings." Kale met her gaze steadily. "I seek only fairness, your majesty. For humans to be treated as equals." The queen's eyes narrowed. "Equals? After centuries of service, of loyalty? You ask for too much." Kale's fingers brushed the wrapped ashvane blade hidden beneath his cloak. "The time for old rules is over." Elren leaned forward. "And what of loyalty? Will you betray those who gave you shelter?" Kale shook his head. I fight for all of us, humans and elves alike." A tense silence filled the room. Suddenly, the queen smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "Then prove it." She raised her hand. "There is unrest in the southern borderlands. Rebels grow stronger, and our armies falter." She looked directly at Kale. "Lead a mission to quell the rebellion. Show me your strength and your loyalty." The council murmured approval. Kale's heart raced. This was his chance. "Yes, your majesty," he said. Outside the palace, May and Joran awaited, their faces tense. Kale told them, "This mission is a test. We must succeed, not just to survive, but to show the elves that humans can lead." May clenched her fists. "We won't fail." Joran nodded. "And if we do, we make sure it's not the end." The next morning, Kale stood before the troops, mostly elven soldiers, with a few human fighters mixed in. He felt their eyes on him, some doubtful, others curious. He spoke loud and clear. "This is more than a battle. It's a chance to change our fate. Fight smart. Fight together." The army moved out. The journey to the southern border was long and harsh. The rebels were clever, using the land and shadows to their advantage. Kale remembered the scroll's words and Ashvain's power. He ordered his men to set traps of their own, quick, silent strikes and false retreats that lured the enemy into corners. At night, he held secret talks with rebel leaders, humans, and a few disloyal elves. They shared stories, fears, and hopes. The war was not just about power. It was about respect. One night, after a fierce skirmish, Kale sat by the fire with May. "We are changing things," she said quietly. Kale nodded. "But the queen's eyes are everywhere. We must be ready." The flames flickered, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. The war was no longer just between elves and humans. It was a battle for the soul of Etherian itself. The sun rose over the battlefield, its light cutting through the morning mists like a sword. Kale stood at the front, the Ashvain blade gleaming in his hand. Around him, humans and elves stood side by side, a sight many thought impossible. The air was thick with tension. The rebel forces were strong, led by those who wanted freedom, but also by those who wanted chaos. The queen's army was large but rigid, bound by old laws and pride. Kale took a deep breath. Today, everything would change. "Hold the line," he shouted, his voice clear and commanding. The two armies clashed. Steel rang against steel. Arrows flew like deadly rain. But Kale fought not just with strength, but with wit. He moved quickly, using the knowledge he had learned from the ancient scroll and the power of the Ashvain blade. As the battle raged, Kale spotted Queen Ellerin on a high hill, watching with a sharp gaze. She had sent her personal guard to the front, strong warriors who believed they could crush the rebels and their human leader. Kale knew this was the true test. With Meng and Joran at his side, Kale charged toward the queen's guard. The Ashvain blade burned bright, its red fire lighting the way. The fight was fierce. Kale ducked and dodged, his every move clever and fast. The sword seemed to guide him, its power flowing through his veins. One by one, the guards fell, their surprise at Kale's skill clear. At last, Kale stood before the queen herself. She stepped down from her hill, her silver hair shining like a crown. "You fight well, Kildaro," she said, voice steady. "But this war is not over." Kale met her gaze. "It is only the beginning. We fight for a new world, one where humans and elves stand as equals." Ellerin's eyes softened for a moment. "You have changed much, perhaps more than I thought possible." Behind her, the army paused. The battle slowed. Kale lowered the Ashvain blade and spoke loudly so all could hear. "We do not need to destroy each other. We need to rebuild to understand. Together, we are stronger." For a long moment, a silence held the air. Then slowly, the queen nodded. The soldiers dropped their weapons. Humans and elves looked at each other, no longer enemies but strangers hoping for peace. Kale smiled. This was the moment they had fought for. But he knew the road ahead would be long and hard. change was never easy. As the sun climbed higher, Kale looked to the horizon, the flames inside Ashline still glowing. The flame of hope was alive, and it would burn brighter than any sword.